Welcome back to CSC Today, the programme from the Palmerston North Community Services Council. And Michelle has had to nip out briefly during this episode, leaving me alone. We'll judge the wisdom of that later. With Terry Lloyd West from Strive Rehabilitation. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Fraser. Good morning, listeners. Nice to be here.
Now, Strive Rehabilitation, some people may go, well, who are they? Where have they come from? But actually, Strive, one of the longest serving members, I think, from the Community Services Council, but under a different name.
We are. We've actually rebranded. So you may be familiar with the Manawatu Stewart Centre Trust. And we decided nationally to rebrand our services. We wanted to include the word rehabilitation in there, which gives people a little inkling about what the work is that we do. And there was numerous debates, discussions, I suppose you could say disagreements around the name.
There always is. That's
over many years. And
Healthy.
And we have decided on the word strive. We feel that strive... it means to do one's best, to work really hard. It's got to achieve, to be in forward momentum. So it's a good word for a rehab service.
So it's not an acronym then.
It's not an acronym.
Hooray! Oh yes, no, those can be tenuous at times. So you've hinted then this was a national decision. So were there Stewart centres all over the country, or did they all have their different names but provide similar service?
No, there are 3 centres, so
right.
And all 3 of us were called Stewart Centres, so we have all rebranded.
Right.
So yes, we've just got the region name at the end to distinguish us. So we'll Strive Rehabilitation Manawatu.
So what was the? Obviously, we want to look at the new brand, but I'm interested in the old one. What was Stewart a reference to?
Okay, so in 1991 or 92, somewhere around there, there were a couple who were Alex and Mary Stewart, and which is where we get the name from. Mm-hmm. So they had a son, Tommy, who had a major traumatic brain injury while they were on holiday in Australia, and had a lot of acute and outpatient input in Australia, and were very pleased with the service, actually. They came back to New Zealand and they just found that they were put into the ether, and that there really wasn't, once you're discharged from hospital, there isn't really rehab opportunities in the community.
Or support, I assume.
So the Stewart Centres were really around support for family whānau initially, and also ongoing rehabilitation for clients once they leave the hospital. So that's where we came from. That was our origin. And then I think we started in Palmerston North in 2001. Under the previous service manager, Janet Webb, and
nod to Janet.
Yeah, so she started the service, and I've been the service manager for just over a year now.
So I guess some of the discussion, perhaps, around the rebrand was making sure that the initial ethos and initial reason for the centres being in existence wasn't lost by losing the name Stewart. But I'm assuming, everything else is business as usual. It's the same service. It's just a way of sort of reimagining the look, which I guess everyone has to do at some point.
Yeah, it is. It's just a change of service. We felt that it was time to give it more meaning so that people could identify something about what we do from the name.
Now, you had an open day and the rebranding launch last weekend, which sadly I couldn't get to, which I'm really, really annoyed about. Actually, it wasn't the weekend, was it? It was Friday?
It was on Thursday, the
Thursday.
22nd. Yeah.
There we go. Make me look like I haven't done my research. On Thursday, and the weather turned out to be kind, but didn't look that way at the beginning. So the big brain went indoors. I heard about that.
It was a little bit inclement, yeah, and unfortunately it was the tail end of the cyclone. So
yes, thank you, Geeta.
Yes, thank you. And it did come out nice, actually. It stopped raining around about 10ish. I mean, it was off and on up until then. So we wanted to have the launch on our front lawn. We've got a big front lawn, and we had organised for this huge blow-up brain. I just forget the dimensions. I think it was 3 metres high, about 5 metres wide, 4 metres across, so it's huge. And it belongs to the Brain Health Research Centre, which is part of Otago University. And it came along with its own neuroscientist who was very interesting. He's only just submitted his PhD, which I was interested in his research. And so he was there and available to answer questions as well about the brain. He was tied up. I noticed he hadn't had lunch by 2 o'clock, so I did give him a little bit of respite and locked him in my office. So,
but it's a testament to your facilities, I suppose, that you had a space big enough to put that indoors.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I took up the whole of our activity centre, which is like a big hall, really.
No, we've had some managers' retreats there as well, CSC.
Yeah.
But I guess the other thing would be, because you wanted to have the launch on your front lawn, I suppose actually by having some things indoors, people got to walk through and see your facility, which might have been a double-edged sword there. Nice to get them to see it face to face.
Yeah, and that was some of the feedback too, was that they got to see some of the inside of the building. So we had other services who were able to come and present their information and freebies. So I'm just trying to think who was there. Stroke Central, the Brain Injury Association, Alzheimer's. So various neurological groups also came along and had their displays there. So
is there quite a close-knit community in the neurological injury or health area? Do you work quite closely together?
We do, but there is room for improvement, and you know, like my vision is to try and bring it together. At one stage, we had kind of like a neurological forum where any agency that's involved, sort of in the brain, really, could come along, and it's really just an opportunity to touch base, look at our challenges, look at how we can collaborate. And that did kind of fizzle. I think people are very busy. Yeah. But I think there's an opportunity for that kind of collaboration to happen, even if it's a quarterly meeting, you know, something. So it's kind of on the back burner for me. I've got that in my head that we should do something with that.
Well, you do talk about being busy, and it's a thing that our entire sector is awash with. And I don't want to point fingers at central government, but certainly in my limited experience, Access Radio is kind of weird. We sit on the fringes of social services, but certainly our compliance has increased as well. Yours, no doubt, as well. And I understand it's that time of year for the recontracting and things, and that must be a big job.
Yeah, that's a big job. Yeah, we've got a big contract tender coming up with ACC. And also the sector is changing the way in which they're doing contracting now. So people may or may not be aware that the health and disability sector particularly is looking at making contracts more accessible to families and clients through individualised funding.
Yes.
Yeah. And
actually, that came up in one of our other interviews on CSC today. I can't remember which one. If people want to go trawling through our archives, they can find it. But I remember that. It's coming down to sort of individualised funding. Use that as you see fit to rehabilitate or get the support.
Yeah, that's right. So ACC are calling that client self-management. So what it basically is that you would be, I guess, profiled under a tier of funding. I don't know what it could be. It could be several $1,000s or whatever, but they'd come up with a figure, and that would be your annual allowance for purchasing of services. And you could use it or you could lose it. You can't buy a TV with it or anything like that, but you have to purchase services. And yeah, it gives the family and the client a bit more autonomy. They can have more self-directed services.
Does that, I don't want to get into the detail of this at all. I appreciate it's a sensitive subject, but does that put organisations that rely on that funding, does that encourage a more competitive model, or do you think you've got the relationships in place to make this work?
I think it could be competitive because I guess it's a little bit like, I had a friend who is from Melbourne, and we're following an Australian model with this. I think it's called the National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia. We're paralleling that here. But he said that it's a little bit like going in an ice cream shop and having, 30 or 40 different flavours. And of course, if you're choosing an ice cream, it's got to not only be good and be good for you, but it's got to look pretty good as well. Yeah. So, we'll go for the ones that have got the hundreds and thousands in it or whatever, and we'll say, we want that one. So marketing will become important, I think, for this sector.
And as you say, the bringing together of the neurological service providers to provide a good backbone, a good suite of facilities, for ice cream again, for clients to choose and make the right choice. Again, not necessarily on how it looks, but how satisfying, how fulfilling it is for the existing purpose. Just when you were talking there as well about sort of the business that you have to undertake, or the practice of dealing with it like a business, Stewart Centre were successful in the Westpac Business Awards a couple of years ago, weren't they?
We were successful.
Yes. So that stands you in a bit of good stead as well, knowing that you've got the system, you've been independently accredited as having the right systems in place. That must be nice.
That is nice. Yeah, that's nice to get that community affirmation, and particularly from the the business people in the area. I think we've got a good name, but we do. Every provider needs to work on marketing and having, one of the areas where it's really fallen over in Australia. I could get into trouble probably from saying this, but one of the problems with individualised funding is that you need to have information available to people so that they can really understand what they're purchasing. And so you need to have really good advocacy as well. So, and so there needs to be an injection of money from the government into making sure that people can make informed choice,
Yeah, because you think about where people get their information from. It's on the internet, it's in GP surgeries, it's at the hospital, it's at other service providers, it's from their friends, it's from other clients that have had experiences as well. And you need to be everywhere in order to stand a chance of being chosen, I suppose.
Yeah. And in some ways our rebranding's timely in the sense that hopefully the name will stand out a little bit more than Stewart Centre. Not to put the Stewart Centre down, but at least it's more meaningful in the sense that we can at least say that we're, from our name, that we're a rehabilitation service.
Nice to know that it was a rebrand for reasons and not just a rebrand sake. So let's talk about some of the services that Strive Rehabilitation offer, because I know you have quite a wide range of clients. Some of them come and make radio programs here, actually.
They do.
And I imagine some can pretty much look after themselves. It's just an added layer of support that might be necessary, or even companionship, right through to people that need quite solid support and services and sort of mental physiotherapy, I suppose it might be the layman's way of putting it. So I'm assuming you sort of cover the whole board.
We do. People that come to us are on individual programs. So, like you say, it's very different depending on the person. So it is individualised. It's very individualised. People come with different needs. The way that we operate, philosophically, we like to. Our framework for practice is really based around a person's interests, aspirations, and dreams, rather than around the pathology, I suppose. So rather than looking at, a more clinical way of looking at something is that you've got something wrong and we will fix that. Mm-hmm. We like to approach it from the other side of the coin. I mean, it has the same result, but we like to use interests and aspirations as the vehicle for rehabilitation. So it's a slightly different approach to what you'd get in an acute setting. But we still like to focus on, there are basic domains, I suppose, with human beings. We have a physical domain, a cognitive, psychosocial, behavioural, these types of areas. And a client will often have outcomes and goals within those domains. We'll set a plan for about 6 months. We review it at the halfway point. It may change as well, but often clients will have a physical goal, something cognitive, something psychosocial or behavioural.
And so clients more often than not will self-assess those desires. You don't sort of pick them for them.
We don't pick them for them, no. It's self-determined. Sometimes we might, but we're very open if we do. Sometimes we will put an idea on the table of what, because as a health professional, it's quite easy to look at a client and to work out what they need and say, this is what you need. If you do this, you will get better in this area. But we try really hard to sit on our hands with that. And we may say, look, this is what I think, and I'm just putting it there for you to consider. But we wouldn't do what you would do in a clinical setting, which is to say to that client, this is what we're going to do, this will be the intervention, and this is the methodology.
So you must need, therefore, to have a huge range of resources available to cater to those needs. I mean, I know you have groups and things, sort of crafting groups and all that sort of thing, but someone may come in with a completely left field suggestion that you go, right, we're going to do this.
We do. We have a multiplicity of groups, and they do change. We go in and out of different things, and groups may only go for a 6-week period or something, and then we'll go into something else. We do one-to-one stuff as well, but we are quite group-orientated, and we sort of believe in the power of the group.
Yeah.
We call ourselves a therapeutic community, and what we mean by that is that the community itself, and like the Strive Rehabilitation community itself, is therapeutic in nature, which means that as people are connected to a community, there's kind of like there's health and well-being just in that connection rather than in the input from health professionals. So, you know, that community feel and that sort of spirit, we actually work quite hard to maintain that.
I apologise. I spent the weekend watching the new Jungle Book movie with my children, and there is the law of the wolf pack is the strength of the wolf is in the pack and the strength of the pack is in the wolf. And that just resonated with me there as you're going, you know, the strength of the person is in that group, but the group provides the strength back as well.
Yeah.
I apologise. Disney, how dare you?
Right, it's good analogy.
One final thing I wanted to touch on, because we were talking about this just before we started the interview, and it sounds quite interesting, is not necessarily a move away from volunteers. Volunteers are, of course, vital to our organisations. But the inclusion now of a slightly more formal setup in providing some services and experience with students.
That's right, yes. And we have done that for a number of years, but it seems to be growing.
Yes.
We take student placements. Often they're like... well, at the moment, we have a third-year physio student from Otago University. So she'll do a placement with us for, I think it's 8 weeks. Could be wrong.
So they measure these things in hours normally, don't they? And then you have to translate
it.
it.
Yes, that's right. Yes, we've got one student coming up for 480 hours, which equates to basically 3 months. So so she's with us at the moment. We've got a physiotherapist that on site that she's working with. Just gives them some exposure, and I like the idea that they're getting exposure to something outside of the hospital, because invariably they will end up probably in allied health within the hospital. But I quite like the idea that they're experiencing something in the community around health and wellness.
CSC have found that a similar experience when we get social work students to do our research projects out of the Social Wellbeing Forum. And it's a tough placement, there's no doubt about it, trying to cram what they do into 480 hours. But certainly with Gail and Aaron, our most recent students, their confidence and ability has just... Aaron in particular has come out of his shell. He gave a deputation to Horizons last week on his own, which he would not have done at the beginning. I don't think it's unfair to say.
Was that the research around transport?
Yes, it was, yes. Which I'm quite sure you had some input into at some point.
We had them come and meet with us and interview us, and clients.
So you've is this student use experience model going to grow more? Can you see other avenues to implement that, even beyond Strive, I suppose, in our society?
I think it can grow. It's got a good opportunity to grow. We're just at the moment in negotiation with UCOL, and I hope I don't speak out of turn if they're listening, because with the meetings tomorrow. But I have had phone conversations and met with them. But we're looking at...
Fair to say things are positively being explored.
Explored, yeah. So the nitty-gritty hasn't been worked out yet, but they're looking at bringing people from the Health and Wellbeing Certificate to do placement with us. I think it's the level 3, level 4. We also have social work students as well do the 480-hour placement. That's been really good. We've done that for a number of years. But I think with UCOL, one of the things that we have a communication group which is made up of clients who have aphasia, which is a condition that usually through stroke, but it can be through traumatic injury, is the language centres in the brain are affected, so they lose the ability really to speak, or sometimes to find the words that they need in order to put a sentence together. But they're fully intelligent,
yes.
And so it's quite frustrating in the community. And some of them have got some fairly horrific stories of how they have been treated in the community. Some positive ones as well about how the community has been very accessible and embracing. But we were thinking that, maybe there would be an opportunity for them to provide training for students. Particularly, we started with tourism and hospitality students who would be coming, face to face with people with disability. And really, we just the clients just wanted an opportunity to say what their experience had been and how it could be so much better if they had done this. So if a person comes up to you who's non-verbal, how not to feel threatened by that, and not to be threatened by a whiteboard or another form of communication. So just very simple things.
Actually, this I'm not accrediting this to you unfairly, but it's a comment I remember hearing in that public transport research, particularly around bus drivers not being able to engage with clients that have language issues. And I think that's probably Multicultural Council as well, people with English as a second language, being able to communicate simple things like, can you kneel the bus for me so I can get on? It's a comment I've heard repeatedly. So it's good to hear, that it's not just public transport in a way. We're not just pointing the finger at one area, but also that we can lead as a sector, hopefully. Bring us on board, Terry, that's the way. Lead the sector in just that little bit of additional education. It's not much, it's just a little bit of education to go, all right, now I get it.
And of course, I like the whole focus that clients are experts. They're experts on communication, non-verbal communication, because they experience that, they live that. And, I think that one of our roles is to tap into that expertise and provide a platform where they can facilitate. And so this is something that we've been doing with UCOL. We've had students who have come and done sessions with this group. It started with tourism. They're in the business faculty as well, and soon they'll be in nursing. So
marvellous.
It's great, yeah.
Positive stuff coming out of Strive Rehabilitation.
Positive.
Very. Now, just before we wrap up, if people want more information on Strive Rehabilitation Manawatu, or indeed the other centres, I suppose, or want to get in touch with you specifically, how can they do that?
Okay, so we're in the phone book. We have a website. A lot of people start with the website. If you Google Strive Rehabilitation, we're the first one that comes up.
Yep.
So you'll see us there. And one of the tabs is about services. So, we've listed it all there. If you don't have access to the internet, you could ring us. 354-6728 is our phone number. Always happy to answer questions, to have people to come over for a chat as well.
Very, very welcoming place. As I said, Palmerston North Community Services Council have made use of your facilities for some of our forums as well. Nice to see that collaboration happening there. Very friendly place. We do encourage you to make contact if anything has resonated with you in the interview today. Terry Lloyd West from Strive Rehabilitation, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
When I'm away on another episode, road tripping, sounds polarized and my mind starts drifting. Start to see a different side of the picture. I appreciate it.